George Kittle, a forever Niner, new contract, his third with the San Francisco 49ers. Niners did add a swing tackle post-draft and Winks draft grades. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock here, Croc not, but you know who is, and you know what day it is. It is a Winky Wednesday episode. My guest, Nicholas Winkler. We're talking George Kittle, we're talking DJ Humphries, and we're talking 49ers draft, the biggest news day here after the NFL draft. And today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to get started. Now let's properly bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Can't believe it.
Action News 8 Sports with Nick Winkler.
Wink, what's happened, my man? It's a big news week for the San Francisco 49ers. I'm sure you were tuned into the NFL draft, watching all 11 selections for the San Francisco 49ers, and you have some thoughts there. They did not draft an offensive tackle for the forever straight year of the Kyle Shanahan. Well, basically since 2018, they haven't drafted an offensive tackle, essentially. And then George Kittle gets a new deal. We're going to start there because this is a phenomenal move, in my opinion. I think George Kittle he belongs on the movie poster, right, of the Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch era of the San Francisco 49ers, drafted that first year in 2017, fifth round pick, now signs a 4-year extension worth $76.4 million with $40 million of that guaranteed over the course of 4 years. So he gets $0.4 million more than McBride got, who was previously, for not very long this offseason, the highest paid tight end in the NFL. Now that title belongs to, and rightly so, George Kittle, who is the best tight end in the NFL. Wink, I think you would agree. 4 years, $76.4 million. And let's be honest, hopefully this means that George Kittle retires a San Francisco 49er, goes on the 10-year wall and everything, because he's been everything great that's been about this football team. George Kittle embodies all of it.
He really does. I mean, you're talking about a guy that is the best tight end in football. And for my money, the best tight end in 49ers history. And they've had some good ones. I mean, we did a pick a few years ago, a little draft where me, you, and Croc, we did our selections of all-time Niners. And, Brent Jones is a good pick. Vernon Davis, good pick. But to me, there's no question that it's George Kittle. And it's not just for what he brings in the receiving part of his game, but more so for what he does in the blocking game, which will never – there's no stat for that for tight ends, and that's not going to show up when people are like, oh, the greatest tight ends. They're just going to look at numbers. They're going to look at catches and yards and touchdowns and this and that. And that's cool for a wide receiver, right? But we're talking about a tight end. We're talking about a guy who's in the trenches every single play, loves it. When he's mic'd up and he pancakes someone, that is one of my favorite sounds in the world, is the George Kittle giggle. When he's just like a little boy out there, just like, like, I just got you. You're bigger than me. You should have won that. I won. I mean, what he brings to this team, not only with the two things I mentioned, but also in the locker room. And he's just a fun guy. He's a leader. He's everything that a 49er should be. And he's everything you should build a franchise around. And I'm glad that they made him essentially a forever 49er.
Absolutely. And I mean, phenomenal with the media, phenomenal with the fans. Obviously, phenomenal football player, good in the locker room. He's actually made other tight ends in the NFL better. That's how good George Kittle is, because he's doing the tight end university every offseason now in Nashville, where he makes his offseason home. And he's made the entire NFL better, not just the San Francisco 49ers. So phenomenal stuff there. And I look at a team like the Chicago Bears, and they just drafted a tight end, Colston Loveland out of Michigan, number 10 overall in the NFL draft. They spent a top 10 pick on a tight end, Wink. And he
Fifth
can't
round, baby.
possibly be but here's the thing. Sure, draft him top 10. He can't be as good as George Kittle, because he will never, he might be a good receiver. The style of player he is, though, he will never be the blocker that George Kittle is. So at best, he'll be half as good as George Kittle, right? And so when you start, go ahead.
Most teams need two tight ends to do
Right.
what George Kittle does. They have their blocking tight end and they have their receiving tight end. And when they come on the field, you essentially know what the offense is going to do. But the 49ers don't have that because George Kittle's so great at both of those things.
When you look, Wink, at what George Kittle's getting paid now, the top tight end in the NFL, $20 million per year. And look, tight end money going up a little bit, right? As every position just about in the NFL, some positions a little stagnant more than others. But for what George Kittle brings you, it is the best money spent in the NFL. Look at what wide receivers are getting right now. The best wide receiver in the NFL gets almost double per year what George Kittle gets. And some of these wide receivers, and I'm going to start reading off wide receivers, Wink. And some of them you might rather have than George Kittle. The top wide receiver per year average, contract average, annual average value is Justin Jefferson's $35 million per year. CeeDee Lamb recently signed his deal. This is from at the end of last year, so not counting the new contracts were even signed in 2025. $34 million per year for CeeDee Lamb, $32 million a year for A.J. Brown. And then you go all the way down to where you start getting to where George Kittle is under $20 million per year. And you get Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen's just over $20 million. You get Chris Godwin. You get Brandon Cooks, $19.8 million. Deontay Johnson, $18.8 million. Christian Kirk, $18 million per year. Jerry Jeudy, $17.5 million per year. And that's the neighborhood that the top tight ends in the NFL are right now. That's where George Kittle is. That's insane. It's a no-brainer. Give George Kittle the most money of any tight end in the NFL, because when you compare it to what other positions are getting, it is a smashing value. And so it's a phenomenal deal. It's a no-brainer deal for George Kittle, even when he starts to get a little bit older and, he's on the wrong side of 30. Tight ends can age pretty gracefully as long as he's able to stay healthy, and he does play a physical style of football, right, Wink? So
he really does.
Phenomenal deal. It's a no-brainer. You can't, based on the market, you can't overpay George Kittle. Essentially, it's like, whatever the most is, it's a value signing at this point with the way the economics are in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that you want to keep around, period. Like, if he retired tomorrow, the 49ers should try to find a way to keep him within the franchise in some way, because he's a huge fan favorite. Like you said, great with the media. He's funny. He's just a nice guy. Like, he checks all the boxes, and that's not even talking about him as a football player, which is why they really gave him all this money, because he's the best tight end in football. There's not one tight end in the NFL right now that I would trade him for. It just wouldn't happen. Even if you're like, okay, you can have him at cheaper. No, I don't want that. I want George Kittle on my football team. I want him to have his 10 years. I want him to be put in that 10-year club. I want him to retire as a 49er. I love George Kittle. Any fan out there that doesn't love George Kittle, come on. Like, seriously, what, do you just not like nice people?
Yeah.
Just control? Like, come on.
I've never actually, and like fans of other teams, it's like, man, I wish we had a George Kittle. Right?
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody be like, oh, George Kittle's overrated. Nobody says that ever.
No, he even did WrestleMania or something too. He did like WWE, and I'm sure he was beloved in that as well. I mean, it just seems like whatever he does and whatever he decides to do, even when he's done with football, I have a very strong feeling that he's going to be successful at it, because he's just one of those guys.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about George Kittle, because why not? He deserves his flowers. This is his day. And I think it's awesome news for the San Francisco 49ers here as we head toward 2025, and a big thing to check off for the offseason to-do list before the 49ers get going with training camp, and before they even get going here with rookie mini camp and get all the rookies in. Speaking of rookies, we're going to talk with Wink about how he feels about the 49ers' most recent draft class. And the 49ers did add a swing tackle. It wasn't during the draft, but it was after the draft. And I've got some insight from a guy that covered DJ Humphries every day when he was an Arizona Cardinal, and where DJ Humphries is at right now in his career as he gets added to the San Francisco 49ers roster. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs, they're almost here. FanDuel is giving new customers. What am I talking about? The NBA playoffs. They're here and going, the NBA playoffs. Some phenomenal games already. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. And right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's just picking your favorite team. You want to bet on the Dubs win in the playoffs? You can do that. You dive into player props, 3-pointers, steals, assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into same game parlays for a chance to win big and still bet on NFL. I'm just talking about betting on the NFL and maybe the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, you can make that bet as well at FanDuel. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is FanDuel.com. George Kittle, phenomenal football player. And I want to just go through the stats because I wanted to remind myself exactly how many catches for how many yards George Kittle had last year. 78 catches for 1,106 yards and 8 touchdowns. That was his second highest output in his entire career, both yardage and touchdowns. And it's kind of done quietly, wasn't it, Wink? Like, people don't talk about like how much of a game wrecker he is. And he had such a phenomenal season. It's only second in yards to his breakout 2018 second year when he had 1,377 yards and 88 catches that year. That was the most yardage. So second most yardage in 2024. And then second most touchdowns. He had 11 touchdowns in 2022, and he had 8 touchdowns last year. So he had a phenomenal season, still at age 31, playing at a super high level. And Wink, Croc and I talk about it almost weekly during the season here on Locked On 49ers, that they don't even give him enough touches. Like, he's such a good blocker. They keep him in to block a lot. Maybe that's why they wanted to bring in an extra blocker in free agency at tight end. So maybe we can get this guy out on a few more pass routes. Like, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be getting 10, 12 targets a game.
I mean, it's funny when people compare him to someone like Travis Kelce, where the offense is clearly built around getting him the football because he's a receiver. He's not really a tight end. George Kittle is like the 4th option on the 49ers, right? You got McCaffrey, you had Debo, you had Ayuk, and then Kittle. And it's like, all right, how many teams in the NFL right now would build their offense around George Kittle and be like, he's the man, get him the ball. He should get 8 to 10 targets every single game. This is how you win football games, is you give your best players the football. Well, he's such a great blocker that's why they keep him in so often, right? Is so that these other guys can get open and he can act like a 6th offensive lineman, which he does often, and he does extremely well. But you're right. If the 49ers decided to wake up and be like, look, we're going to give him 8 to 10 targets a game and he stays healthy for a whole season, he's going to break all those records. Every tight end record is going to be broken by George Kittle. I mean, anybody right now would look at those numbers that you just said from George Kittle from last year, and if you said, can I have those again this year? You say yes in a heartbeat. You're just like, yeah, those are fantastic numbers for a tight end, any tight end, and especially with a guy who can block like George Kittle. I'm just going to keep harping on that because no one does it. There's never been anyone who's done it as good as he has, period.
No, it's phenomenal stuff. And like, George Kittle is actually climbing the charts in franchise leader territory, right? In receiving. Let's see if I can pull up the receiving leaders here, career for the San Francisco 49ers, because he's getting very close to doing big things for the career records for the San Francisco 49ers. And while I pull that up, I want to talk about Claire Kittle too, who's phenomenal. George Kittle's wife, and I'm sure he would say he wouldn't have achieved everything that he's achieved in his career, but she was an athlete too in college. I believe she played, was it softball at Iowa too? Is that where they met?
That's how they met. Yeah. He said he was like watching her practice or something, or saw her in the locker room and was like, hello, and then been together ever since. It's amazing.
Can we buy stock in George and Claire Juniors too? They're on the way. Like,
I know, right?
Like, can we sign like a lifetime contract with the family just to keep that family in the 49ers family going forward?
It's going to come out. Yeah, and Iowa's going to be like, hey, we're going to sign that kid right now. I don't care what he's going to do, but he's coming to Iowa and he's going to dominate. And we're going to pay for his whole scholarship. Or her. Either way.
The Niners keeping the Iowa pipeline open, by the way. Connor Colby, 7th round pick, offensive lineman, guard.
Offensive lineman in the draft. Surprise to me.
What's that?
That was their only offensive lineman drafted. That was a shock.
Second to last, like, we got to take an offensive lineman. And Kyle's like, I don't know, who's left from Iowa? Connor Colby. Yeah, let's go.
That's cool. Never heard of him, but he's from Iowa. Go.
What's his short shuttle? Oh, 4.6. Okay, yeah, let's go. That fits right in. So where is George Kittle? George Kittle right now. Do you know where George Kittle is on the 49ers all-time career receiving yards list?
It's got to be top 10, right?
He's number 3.
Wow.
And
behind Rice and Owens. I mean, yeah, okay.
If he has 1,200 receiving yards, which he's done before, he was only 100 yards shy of that last year. If he has 1,200 receiving yards, he'll be number 2.
He'll pass T.O.?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Isn't that wild? And then if he has like 30,000 more receiving yards, he'll pass Jerry Rice.
So just sign another 4-year contract after this 4-year contract's up, and we're good.
So that's what's crazy. So he needs 1,200 more receiving yards to be number two all-time receiving yards in San Francisco 49ers franchise history. He's already number 3. He passed up Dwight Clark last year. He passed up actually Gene Washington. And I remember talking about that actually on the podcast now that I think about it. Because I had to double check and make sure he was as high as I thought he was on the list. He passed up both Gene Washington and Dwight Clark at 4 and 5 last year. So he's number 3. And so he needs 1,200 more receiving yards to pass Terrell Owens. And he needs 10,250. So at least 10,000 more on top of that to get to Jerry Rice's territory. 19,247 receiving yards for the GOAT.
I mean, let's be real. No one's going to break Jerry Rice's.
He's not going to get that. He's not going to.
No one is. No one is.
But 4-year contract, unless something catastrophic happens, George Kittle's going to be the number 2 receiver in 49ers history when he retires.
It makes sense, right? It tracks. We've watched George Kittle play every game of his professional career, and he's a stud, period. It couldn't happen to a better person, too.
Yeah. So that's it's pretty amazing stuff there. And I love that they got a deal done. I love that it's done now. Doesn't have to drag on or anything like that. So George Kittle sticking around, and hopefully he spends the rest of his career with San Francisco 49ers. Again, like he belongs on the movie poster for this era of San Francisco 49ers football.
And again, he'll belong on, do they need to win a championship for him to belong on the poster for the whole franchise? Yeah, he probably does.
Yeah, he's got to win a title. He's Kyle too. Like they've done some.
Oh, Kyle for sure. 100%.
Like,
but Kyle wouldn't even go on the poster. You can't have 2 coaches on the poster. Bill Walsh is on the poster, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's
for the all-time. I mean, guy won 4 championships.
How many people?
Oh, he won 3. He won 3, right?
3, yeah. I mean, come on.
Seifert, yeah.
I hope they gave him a ring for the 4th one because he deserves it. He built the whole thing, and it was just like a well-oiled machine. And Seifert got him through it too, which is important. But I mean, I count 4 for Bill Walsh, really, in reality. DJ Humphries. Let's talk DJ Humphries. Signed with the San Francisco 49ers as a swing tackle post-draft. He's been a really good player for the Arizona Cardinals for a long time in his 10-year career now, 31 years old, and drafted in 2015 in the first round by the Arizona Cardinals. And been a phenomenal player. But here's the rub with DJ Humphries. And you would think, oh, why is DJ Humphries unsigned? He's a good player, starting caliber offensive tackle in the NFL. Why is he not signed? Well,
you're reading my mind.
Yeah, well, he tore his ACL in 2023, which is basically his last month as an Arizona Cardinal. He tore his ACL. And since then, he really hasn't played much football and just barely got on the field last year before getting hurt again. Different injury for the Kansas City Chiefs. So what DJ Humphries is, I'm not sure. I did get a little insight from Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. I want to relay that. And then I want to get to Wink's thoughts on the San Francisco 49ers 2025 NFL Draft next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and you wonder, where'd all the money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It's so easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. phenomenal insights. When you start using Monarch, you realize how much you're spending on food delivery or coffee every day, and just makes it a lot easier to budget smarter and save more. And I love this easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So DJ Humphries, this is the report I got from Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. And basically I was like, what's going on with you watched a lot of DJ Humphries, what's going on with him, and like, is he washed now? Why is he someone that signs a short-term backup deal after the draft? And basically he's like, well, now he just can't stay healthy. He tore his ACL the last month of his last season with the Cardinals. He didn't play. He only played, one game, maybe a couple of games before getting hurt with the Kansas City Chiefs last year when they were having trouble trying to figure out their offensive line. And he says, I'm sure if he was healthy, he could be a rotational piece still, but he's also still an incredible locker room guy. So that's a big key for the San Francisco 49ers, always has been. So incredible locker room guy, should at least be able to be a swing tackle for the San Francisco 49ers if he's healthy. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And if he is forced into action, he's still that guy, especially if he jumps in there at left tackle for Trent Williams, who, misses a couple games pretty much every single year, right, Wink? And so that's the hope there. And look, I think the 49ers were planning on drafting a tackle if they could. They could not figure that part out in the draft. It didn't fall for them in that position. And of course, the post-draft now, these signings don't count toward the comp formula. And it looks like the Niners are going to get, by the way, 2 4ths and a 5th next year, compensatory pick. So they're playing the comp game, and now those signings don't count against them for the comp game. So DJ Humphries, welcome to the 49ers' new swing tackle.
And they need it, right? I mean, depth is important on the offensive line. The 49ers last year, like you said, Trent Williams missed some time. Other guys missed time, and you need guys that can fill in. And you don't bring in a guy like Humphries to be like, okay, you're going to be our starting right tackle right now. You're the future. We need you. No, you bring him in to add some depth. And like you said, he's a locker room guy. So he's out there. He's a veteran. And maybe he does take some of these younger guys on the offensive line. He's like, hey, look, you've already got, the silverback gorilla telling you, how to live your lives. But hey, I got a thing or two to share as well. You're going to hear it from both sides. Maybe he is exactly what the 49ers need in that offensive line room. Somebody that can really just be there. And like you said, if they got to make a spot start, maybe they do. And maybe that's good. Maybe he starts one game and then somebody comes back healthy and then he takes a couple games off and maybe needs to hop in at right tackle and then he can do that. And that's a way to keep a guy like that healthy and part of your football team where he can help you. Because, I mentioned, the 49ers only drafted one offensive lineman in the draft. Well, they didn't want to force it with anybody, right? And offensive line last year, yeah, there were some guys that missed some time, but they didn't play that bad. It really wasn't their big area of need. So I like what they've done so far in the offseason when it comes to offensive line, for sure.
It wasn't an amazing offensive line. It wasn't the reason they were only a 6-win team either.
No, it wasn't at all. It was the defense. And that's why when you look at what they did at the draft, it makes perfect sense. This is how you improve a 6-win football team.
I mean, it's clear. Robert Saleh walked in and he's like, guys, this is not going to work. So be prepared. If you're going to hire me, be prepared to make some draft picks. And that's exactly what they did. Did you hold no offensive tackle against them when you're looking at trying to grade the San Francisco 49ers draft, Wink?
Yeah, I did, because that's an area where you're going to need to address it, right, at some point. And if how many more years does Trent Williams have? Is this his last? Does he have 2 more? I think that might be asking a lot. So why not bring in a guy that can study under Trent Williams and, really learn what that's all about and plan for your future? But again, the 49ers really needed defensive line help. Like you said, Robert Saleh comes in. He loves to rush 4 guys. He loves, his scheme, and he needs D linemen. And you saw the 49ers go get some beasts, some real studs for this Robert Saleh defense. I'm excited to see what these young guys got.
It's a good point on the offensive tackle too, because you would like to have a succession where that player could work with Trent Williams and see how things are supposed to be done. If Trent retires and Colton McKivitz moves on in free agency next year, and
What do
maybe,
you got?
maybe there's an awesome prospect that you draft in the first round as a starter right away, but he didn't have that chance to kind of work with those guys and see how things were supposed to be done first. And so you didn't give yourself that opportunity to have a guy develop in-house and be ready to go potentially. And obviously Humphries, you can find they found a swing tackle, but that's a right now need. That's a short-term need. That's not a future hole that is filled that could be a gaping hole in 2026. But right now they've got their, what they think is they're going to be their line for the year. We'll see how that goes. It could go bad. It could go okay. And
you talk about going after a high tackle prospect, but if the 49ers are drafting 32nd next year, which is where we want them to be drafting, there's not going to be a great tackle there available.
It'll be hilarious. You have no offensive tackles. You go into and you can't afford to get one in free agency because you just re-upped another star player on your team and you're about to do the biggest contract in franchise history a little later this offseason. And then you go through free agency. We couldn't really do that. And then you get to the draft and you're like, oh, well, we have high standards of tackle and there wasn't one we liked there at pick 32. And so you just play no tackles. Don't have tackles. Like that's what the direction this thing is going. He's like, you got it at some point like a tackle enough to draft them. So that's that. So that aside, so maybe it's not an A+ draft for that, but I do like the statement that the 49ers made too. That's like, you know what? No, that wasn't it. Right? What happened to all gas, no brakes? Every single player they drafted is either a absolute monster and will mash your face in the run game, or maybe if they're not that big, they're extremely fast and will still mash your face in their own way, right? And so I do like that sort of statement that the 49ers made with their draft picks, even if you don't like, the quote-unquote value they got, drafting some outlier, smaller players. But what are your thoughts on the linebacker? I know you're a linebacker guy. You love watching linebacker play. Nick Martin's fast and goes to the football. It's 5'11", 220. Like, there's not many guys that get drafted in the top 75 that are 5'11", 220 at linebacker. And if they are, they're probably a safety they get drafted. I mean, he's the same weight as Nicky Manwari, the Seahawks safety that was drafted in the second round.
Well, you worry about durability, right? I mean, that's obviously your number one concern when it comes to a guy like that. But, if you're playing next to Fred Warner, again, you want to talk about somebody who can teach you the right way to play, stay healthy, stay out on the field. Fred Warner's been a model of consistency when it comes to the middle linebacker position. And I like him. I mean, I think, like you said, he's fast and he's got a nose for the ball. And I'll be honest, I haven't been the best, judge of talent with the linebackers, with my love of Reuben Foster. Back in the day, I will never forget that.
Hey, that part of the evaluation was on. Like, he was a phenomenal talent. The off-field is tough, right? And we don't get that opportunity to sit face-to-face with him and have that interview and understand what kind of a person he is and interview his coaches and stuff and find out exactly what that part's all about. But the on-field evaluation was correct. He was a first-round talent all day.
Appreciate you letting me slide on that one.
Oh,
but when it comes to Martin, I think he's going to be a stud. I mean, I love what they got with CJ West too. I mean, you talk about monsters, right? You talk about guys that are just going to smack you in the face. I mean, that guy, the fourth round, I was shocked when they drafted him. I'm like, who's this guy? And I watched some film on him and I was like, how did he drop to the fourth round? I didn't get it. It didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Dude, and it's insane. The league lets the San Francisco 49ers draft Brock Purdy in the 7th round, the literal last pick in the draft, right? And then in 2025, they go and let the 49ers draft the next Brock Purdy in the 7th round in Curtis Rourke, CJ West teammate out of Indiana. This is a basketball school. This is the Indiana Hoosiers. He led this team to the stinking college football playoff. Like, they got trounced in the playoff once they got there. But, man, this dude elevated. He elevated at Ohio. He elevated once he got to Indiana. I love to be honest with you, my two favorite picks are the two Indiana guys.
I mean, I was going to talk about Rourke next because, I'm with you, man. Another 7th round guy. Like, let's get it on. This guy was a stud in college. What he did, like you said, Indiana, that's a basketball school. He led them to their best college football season ever. Like, that's crazy that they let this guy slip to the 7th. Let's not get into quarterbacks in the draft because I don't know what most of these GMs were doing when it came to quarterbacks, especially the Cleveland Browns. I mean, the most dysfunctional quarterback franchise over the last 30 years. They draft a guy and then they trade up to draft Shedeur Sanders. Like, I don't understand.
be honest with you, we're obviously in jest talking about the next Brock Purdy and Curtis Rourke, even though I like him. I think, dude, he's 6'4", he's got a great arm. I mean,
solid.
He's an awesome backup quarterback prospect. And I knew Kyle Shanahan was going to like him. Like I called that a while ago. Like phenomenal fit. Love the Rourke pick. He might have to redshirt because he's got that ACL, but he played through an ACL injury. He had another injury too. It was his hand, and he's still got his team in the college football playoff. It's crazy. But it was a lot like that 2022 draft, right? Where like, oh, this guy's a first rounder. Nope, he's actually a fifth rounder. Sam Howell, right? That's what happened to Sam Howell in that draft. A bunch of other guys thought Ritter and there was an Ole Miss quarterback. This time the guy went in the first round, but who was it? Matt Corral. He was like, oh, this guy might go in the first round too. Ends up in the third round. I think he's already out of the league. So I don't know how that Lane Kiffin offense translates to the NFL too. So like, man, trading up for Dart in the first round, that's a dubious move, I think, as well. So like, it's kind of very similar. This draft was just all over the place with those quarterbacks and just not a great quarterback class. And all of a sudden, who knows? Maybe one of the best ones is one of the guys that falls to day 3 or maybe even to the 7th round. Who knows?
I like what the Niners did with their weapons too. I mean, you get Watkins, a guy who can, take the top off of defense. Then, that they tried it with Danny Gray, right? And that was a huge failure. So maybe, they're like, all right, let's try that again. Hit the reset button on a guy who can fly. And then with Bergen? Like he's a converted running back?
Running back. He had crazy agility testing. He led the country in punt returns. Like he's a weaver.
Here we go.
He weaves and finds his way, run after catch. So Kyle Shanahan might be able to do something with that. Kyle's basically like, yeah, you're either gonna win the return job or you're not gonna be on the team. So that's what that pick was all about.
So get on the jugs.
Exactly. You better not be muffing punts because you'll be packing real quick. But if he makes the team, he might have some utility on offense too, right? The Kyle Shanahan's a guy that's been able to utilize that skill set. So really interesting draft class. And again, a lot of speed too. Speed was the name of the game. And if you aren't fast, you better be an absolute monster against the run. And that's exactly what the class was.
A-. Like I said, it would have been an A+ if they had gotten a tackle even late, just a tackle period.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Just to even get lucky and find a guy that could maybe luck into being a swing tackle even for you going forward, but they didn't even give themselves a shot at that one.
Oh, they're drafting a lineman. Guard. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the guard. It was like, oh, they drafted an offensive lineman. Yeah, he's got 4-inch arms. Well, okay, he's not going to be a tackle. Not quite that short of arms.
Like what is this?
Actually, that's still the last prospect I haven't gone to. I haven't watched the film yet of Connor Colby, the 7th round offensive lineman. But Crocker and I are going to be doing the deep dives here on the Locked On 49ers. So stay tuned there. Wink, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for jumping on, everybody. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And Croc and I will be back with you tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
Can't believe it.